Danger through the mail. An arrest is made and more suspicious packages sent to Democrat leaders today. We're at the White House with the latest. Opioid addiction. A woman from Arizona tells us how a Catholic group saved her life. Early look. We're in Rome with a preview of what will be in the final document released by the Vatican Synod on youth. And 3 ways to peace. The Holy Father tells the faithful the traits they need to overcome hatred and insults in the world. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, October 26, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. A Florida man is in custody tonight facing 5 charges, including illegal mailing of explosives. Federal authorities say the arrest comes after they intercepted several additional suspicious packages today. Over a dozen potential explosives have been sent to critics of the president this week. No one has been hurt, but President Trump feels bruised by the media coverage. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. No bombs have detonated in this attempt at political violence, but it has caused the president to blow up on Twitter. The latest packages addressed to former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper and Democratic Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. Tonight, we're learning more about the suspect. Authorities arrest Cesar Sayoc Jr., a 56-year-old man from Florida. He's the suspect behind 5 days of bomb scares. Police have blocked potential deadly deliveries from reaching the hands of more than a dozen targets, all with ties to the Democratic Party. Today in Washington, President Trump praised law enforcement and called for an end to division.
The bottom line is that Americans must unify, and we must show the world that we are united together in peace and love and harmony as fellow American citizens.
Pictures show the suspect's van plastered with stickers, many of them pro-Trump, others displaying a hate for Democrats. Today, the president said he will do everything in his power to stop political violence. John Brennan, former CIA director, questions the president.
Unfortunately, I think Donald Trump too often has helped to incite some of these feelings of anger, if not violence.
Implications like that have bothered the president, possibly causing him to lose sleep Friday. He sent this tweet at 3 a.m. Funny how lowly rated CNN and others can criticize me at will, even blaming me for the current spate of bombs and ridiculously comparing this to September 11th and the Oklahoma City bombing. Yet when I criticize them, they go wild and scream, it's just not presidential. Later, the president got political. Republicans are doing so well in early voting and at the polls, and now this, quote, bomb stuff happens and the momentum greatly slows. News not talking politics. Very unfortunate. What is going on? Republicans, go out and vote. In the meantime, President Trump is appealing to African-American voters before the midterm elections. Today, he hosted the Young Black Leadership Summit in the East Room of the White House.
You are not afraid to stand up for your beliefs or stand against injustice. You refuse to be told by the same failed voices how to think or what to believe. You understand that?
President Trump says the worst tendency in politics is to tell people what they should believe based on their race or religion. He argues the Democratic Party failed African Americans, but under his administration, African American unemployment has reached a record low. A conservative student group known as Turning Point USA organized the Young Black Leadership Summit. They say their mission is to promote free markets and limited government. Wyatt?
Okay, Mark, looking ahead, what else is on the president's agenda? We're now less than 2 weeks from the midterm elections.
Well, he is continuing to travel, campaigning as much as he can for Republicans. Tonight, he's in Charlotte rallying for candidate Mark Harris, who's locked in a tight race for Congress. Wyatt?
Another busy weekend. White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thanks, Mark. President Trump's proposal to lower drug prices may take a year to go into effect. This week, he revealed a plan allowing Americans to pay the same low prices other countries pay for prescriptions.
For decades, other countries have rigged the system so that American patients are charged much more, and in some cases, much more, for the exact same drug.
Under the new plan, Medicare payments for drugs would gradually shift to a level based on international prices. It would not apply to medicines people buy at the pharmacy, just ones administered in a doctor's office. The deadliest drug crisis in American history seems to be slowing down. The Centers for Disease Control estimates last year more than 70,000 people died as a result of opioid abuse. But early numbers this year show a drop. And on the campaign trail, candidates promise to help those with addiction. Correspondent Jason Calvi introduces us to one woman whose life was turned upside down by the drugs.
2 days away from giving birth, Devin Jones' life veered off course, hit by a drunk driver.
As soon as I saw wheels in the corner of my eye, I went to protect my daughter.
But her baby Madeline died that day, April 6th, 2013. Devin broke more than 20 bones. Her doctor started her on pain-relieving opioids. She became hooked. Her life crashed.
I became this person that the me before the car accident wouldn't have even recognized. I became toxic.
She says she felt trapped.
I didn't know that it was possible for me to get off of opiates and live a normal life again.
Some never returned to normal. The Surgeon General blames opioid drug overdoses for nearly 48,000 deaths last year. Across the country, political ads take aim.
4 New Yorkers die every day from opioid overdoses.
My family's been shattered by opioid addiction. My grandson was ripped away from his mother.
He is working to get these deadly drugs off our streets.
Now Congress is fighting back against the opioid epidemic.
President Trump this week signed a new law pumping $6 billion into drug treatment, security, and even ads.
We are going to end it, or we are going to at least make an extremely big dent in this terrible, terrible problem.
A problem that consumed Devin for 5 years. At her lowest, she was arrested for a DUI. She turned to Catholic Charities Counseling and Narcotics Anonymous for help.
This is not the life that I'm meant to live. And
Now she's been clean for more than 90 days.
my life is just so much better now. My life is so much more peaceful, and my priorities are straight again, and I still have all of the same qualities I had before the car accident. Like, I'm finally finding myself again.
This 27-year-old studying to become a counselor, hoping to help other mothers who've lost children like her Madeline.
She gave me this purpose in my life that I have now since I've been in recovery to heal.
In Prescott, Arizona, Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Officials at the United Nations say some of the more than 2,000 children in a migrant caravan coming from Central America are ill or suffering from dehydration.
While those traveling with a caravan hope for safety in numbers, the perils of using irregular migration routes remain significant, especially for children. The journey is long, uncertain, and full of danger, including the risk of exploitation, violence, and abuse.
UNICEF calls for the migrant children to be given access to health care, clean water, and other essentials. Meantime, the Trump administration is considering legal action to block some asylum seekers at the Mexican border. A heavy police presence greets dozens of migrants at Bosnia's border with Croatia. The group is trying to enter the country en route to European Union countries. The refugees primarily are from the Middle East. Some migration routes to Western Europe have closed, leaving thousands stranded in Bosnia. A powerful undersea earthquake rocks an island in Greece. A 6.5 magnitude quake was felt as far away as Libya. It cracked the sidewalk and damaged the harbor. It also triggered a tsunami warning lasting several hours. Protests in Madrid as officials consider whether to put the remains of General Francisco Franco inside the city's Catholic cathedral. The government decided earlier this year to have the dictator exhumed from his mausoleum he had built for himself, but if his remains are housed in Madrid, opponents worry the city will become a tourist destination for extreme right pilgrims. A Catholic cardinal warns the Vatican's provisional agreement with China is a step toward the annihilation of the church in the communist country. Writing an op-ed in the New York Times, Cardinal Joseph Zinn says, quote, Pope Francis, an Argentine, doesn't seem to understand the communists. He doesn't know them as the persecutors they become once in power, like the communists in China. Zinn was born in Shanghai and is the former Bishop of Hong Kong. Victims of clergy sexual abuse in Chile file a criminal complaint against one of the country's retired archbishops. Survivors accuse Cardinal Javier Eraz Ruiz of perjury. It is the latest development in the majority Catholic country's abuse scandal. Pope Francis has accepted the resignations of 8 Chilean bishops. One of the Holy Father's advisors says one theme emerging from the Synod on youth is a little out of left field.
So the synodality has not been formally discussed. It has been, but the whole process has been a synodal process. Therefore, there is a question of how much should we speak of synodality. That's one of the questions we are debating.
Cardinal Oswald Gracious of Mumbai is taking part in the month-long meeting of bishops. Tomorrow, bishops will vote on the final report. Senior EWTN contributor Dr. Matthew Bunson joins us from Rome. Matthew, we just heard Cardinal Gracious use the term synodality. What does this mean, and what does he mean by using it?
Yes, well, this is a term that a number of the Synod Fathers have complained that suddenly came out of nowhere and ended up in the draft document for the final report. So the word synod itself means simply an assembly, but synodality, certainly in this pontificate and in the use of Pope Francis, indicates a journeying together. And for it to appear in the document, a number of Synod Fathers are asking, first, why is it in a document about youth? And second, what are its possible implications? Now, the most benign interpretation of synodality as a kind of journeying together was provided by Cardinal Christoph Schönborn of Austria just today at the Holy See press conference, in which he explained that this journeying together suggests a heightened participation, a greater voice for everyone in the church, especially lay people and young people. Those who look at the word synodality and see possible threats or express concern that it could actually have ramifications for church authority. In other words, sort of flattening out the rightful authority in the church, but also potentially bringing about democratization in the church. In other words, a loss of authority by the bishops and, of course, by the Holy Father himself. So we'll have to see what the bishops themselves decide to do when it comes time to vote on the paragraphs on synodality in this document. But that's just one of a number of potentially contentious issues that they're going to be voting on tomorrow.
Sure. I was just going to say just one of many. Tell me, what are some of the other major issues the bishops are considering right now?
Well, as you can imagine, with a document of about 170 paragraphs, if what we're hearing is correct, there are going to be a lot of issues confronting young people. But a couple of flashpoints have emerged. One, of course, is the clergy sexual abuse crisis. How in-depth and how comprehensive should this final report be in its coverage of that major issue? We've heard a few complaints from bishops from around the world that there's perhaps even an overemphasis on sexual abuse crisis, just given that it may not necessarily be as severe in their parts of the world. We've also had discussions about the formation of conscience, authentic conscience, and what that means for young people. And then, of course, there are the potentially contentious issues of sexual identity, of gender. LGBT apparently is not in the document, but there's still concern about authentic teaching of the church regarding human sexuality.
It's incredible when you think that the bishops have been meeting for nearly 4 weeks. Looking ahead now, what happens in the next few days?
Well, in the next few days, we will see the conclusion to this synod. I spoke with a couple of cardinals and archbishops, and I asked them how it was going and what their message is for the synod, and they all said the same thing. This is too long. But tomorrow, the bishops will hear and see the final report. They will then begin a process of voting paragraph by paragraph. They need a 2/3 vote in order to pass each paragraph. That then is presented to Pope Francis, who it's up to him as to whether he will accept it and what he'll do with it after that. And then come Sunday, we have the final closing Mass that Pope Francis will celebrate. Look for his homily, as is often the case in closing synods under Pope Francis. Probably some pretty sharp words for the participants, and then beginning to lay out his vision for how he wants this final report, but also the work of the synod to be advanced across the universal church for young people. And that's going to be a tall order based on the discussions I've been having with a lot of bishops in attendance here.
Like you say, so many important issues they've been talking about. And yes, of course, we'll be watching to see what Pope Francis has to say at the conclusion of all of this. Dr. Matthew Bunson, EWTN senior contributor, thanks so much.
Great to be with you.
Coming up, we talk with the president of a group for Catholic artists, architects, and theologians. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. The Food and Drug Administration is investigating a European online service offering mail-order abortion pills to the United States. Aid Access offers the drug for $95, but the FDA has issued warnings against buying such items online because doing so bypasses important safeguards. The interim president of a Catholic university in New Jersey writes a campus-wide letter after learning seminarians had been harassed by students. Dr. Mary Meehan wrote in an email to Seton Hall University community saying, quote, "The discourse in our world is often coarse, uncivilized, and hurtful these days, but here, where our mission calls us to a higher standard, we expect nothing less than civility." She also said she was saddened to have heard the issue and have to issue the reminder. Seton Hall is home to Immaculate Conception Seminary. A lay apostolate based in Chicago lends its support to artists as they offer their gifts for the greater glory of God. In a little over a week, the Catholic Art Guild will host its second annual conference with artists, architects, and theologians to, in their words, rediscover the power of beauty in the modern world. Joining me now to talk more about the event and the group itself is Kathleen Carr, president of the Catholic Art Guild. Kathleen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The focus of this conference is evangelizing through beauty. How do you think art helps spread the Word of God?
Well, as artists, we want to give the best to God, and we do this, and it's so readily seen in the liturgy and how the art and architecture can surround the liturgy. It's a way to help catechize children all the way up to adults that are sitting in the pew, but there are also symbolism and theological and philosophical reasons why a church should be beautiful and have certain ornament, and so it draws people out of themselves and to the eternal. So it's a way that brings people to reverence and awe, and so it's an important dimension that we artists can contribute to the faith and to our fellow man.
And this is particularly important for you. You are a classically trained painter, and so I want to highlight one of your pieces in particular. It's called Man of Sorrows, which depicts Christ. So as an artist, how do you think your faith sort of influences the creative process?
Well, first of all, because I love Christ so much, I wanted to give my best, and so the good training and spending a lot of time. But I was also influenced in this particular piece by Brant Petre's Jesus and the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist. So I was focusing on the Jewishness of Christ, and I wanted to kind of highlight that because I saw this real beauty to his writing. And so I, like an iconographer, I fast and pray when I work on my sacred paintings. And I think that also helps to imbue, a sense of reverence and grace to the work.
Sure. For people who may not be classically trained like yourself but have an interest in this sort of thing, how can they become involved in the Catholic Art Guild? What do they need to know about the group itself?
Well, it's open for everyone. So, and it's especially attractive for people that are in the visual arts. So that would include architects, artists, designers, and the like. But anybody that is interested in beauty and hoping to help restore this can join, and we have our membership online. And one of the unique benefits of the Guild is our Mass Association. So we sort of believe everything starts and finishes with the liturgy, and so it's fitting that we as artists, our work can be supported by this Mass Association. But all of our events are open to everyone, but also the conference, if they can support the conference, become a member, support our conference, come to our conference. Ticket sales will end on Monday, but we're hosting the Queen's sculptor, Alexander Stoddard. We have Ethan Anthony from Cram and Ferguson, and Dr. Kwasniewski, who is talking about the liturgy and beauty, and then another classical artist, Juliet Aristides. So it's a really exciting, beautiful event. Check out our website and try to support us that way.
It's so fascinating to hear about all the work that you do and work that so many artists are doing across the country. Kathleen Carr, president of the Catholic Art Guild, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next, the Holy Father gives us 3 ways to overcome hatred and violence. Plus, a look at how Christian faith helped a team reach the World Series.
Si può fare la pace al mondo con queste 3 cose piccole? Sì.
Pope Francis urges the faithful to overcome insults and hatred in the world. At his daily Mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says finding peace comes from three things: humility, gentleness, and patience. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. The Los Angeles Dodgers are in the World Series for the second year in a row. One of their star players says his focus is to use the playoffs to honor God. Clayton Kershaw tells FCA Magazine, which is run by the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, you can't choose which talents God gives you, but you can control how you use them. Right now, he and the Dodgers could use a little divine help. They trail the Red Sox 2-0. Game 3 is tonight in Los Angeles. Joining me now to talk faith and sports is Doug Eldridge, a sports agent and public relations consultant. He's also the managing partner of DLE Agency. Doug, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt.
We just heard Clayton Kershaw about his faith and how important that is to him. Are there any other devout Christians that are noteworthy we should note on the Dodgers or the Red Sox in the World Series?
Well, I think Clayton's story is so amazing, and we're going to address it, but sometimes the notion of Christian spirit and fortitude is emblematic in the smallest of things. Just last night, or should I say this morning, around 1 or 2 in the morning, Mookie Betts, the inevitable league MVP for the Red Sox, actually dropped off trays and trays and trays of hot food for the homeless in Boston outside the Boston Public Library. And the only reason we know that is because a random passerby happened to recognize him and take a pic of him and of the homeless as he quickly got into a car. So when we talk about walking the walk and deeds of faith beyond words, I think Kershaw's a wonderful example for the Dodgers. Mookie Betts is a wonderful example for the Red Sox. But Clayton Kershaw is truly emblematic of the strength of character and the depth of faith among the modern professional athlete.
That may be the key to my next question that I want to ask you, because we've heard of athletes quoting scripture or thanking God out loud for their performance. But how do you think it is that athletes talk about their faith more nowadays? Has things changed in the last decade or so in the way that they approach their faith?
No. The only thing that's changed is their platform and pedestal, the scope and reach and impact that they have in broader society to discuss their faith, right? You talk about Kershaw. He had Colossians 3:23 in his Twitter bio for the longest time. These athletes, when he talks about his platform, he talks about the obligation and the opportunity to lead by faith, to talk about the role that Christ has had in his life. He stands tall on the mound, but he walks arguably even taller and casts a larger shadow off the field and in the community. From the work that he's done in Africa with HIV orphans and the like, to the work that he's done there in Los Angeles helping the homeless. He's truly a lead by example, but he's not alone in that regard. I've shared stories of my own clients on the right, from John Jalapio, the starting center for the New York Giants, a devout Catholic, a Tongan. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was standing bedside when he was undergoing surgery and in deep prayer with his extended Tongan family. These guys are defined by faith. They're often recognized for their statistics and their records and their performance, but it's their faith, their passion, and their prayer that distinguishes them.
It's so interesting how they're able to use all the technology and all their resources in order to evangelize. I want to switch gears just a little bit. This week, the AP released its preseason college basketball poll. 2 Catholic schools are in the top 10. We have Gonzaga and then the defending champion Villanova. But last year, of course, women's basketball, Notre Dame, another Catholic school that did well. What is it about Catholic schools and basketball, Doug? Because we always hear about Catholic schools doing well at basketball, but we don't hear it as consistently when it comes to college football or college baseball, but consistently, year after year, it's Catholic schools and basketball. What is it about the culture or what they're eating? What is it?
Well, on the football field, Notre Dame is certainly having a good run this year. But on the basketball field, there's actually an interesting history, and we're confined by time today. But it's a really interesting story about how Catholic universities would always operate around the after-school programs and recruit inner-city talent, which was largely Catholic. And then when some of the Italians and Irish started to move outside of parts of the inner city, and it got, there was an ethnic conversion, the Catholic schools continued to recruit the young African American and Latino students who were replacing them in inner cities and recruiting them through the Catholic sports leagues, right? Which was also a conduit to the Catholic schools. And that faith, that conversion, irrespective of the urban populace, the faith has always been the continuity. Going back to what we were just saying a moment ago, when you asked, has anything changed? I said, no, the only thing that's changed is their platform. The durability and the depth of their faith has always been the same. And I think when we're talking about an inner city populace, when we're talking about the level of just concentration of talent and ability, I think that the Catholic schools have always done a tremendous program from having hands in the dirt and roots in the community, right? Not just working on the basketball court, but working in the broader game of life, helping families, dealing with faith, dealing with these children at every level of their advancement. And I think in the most back of the baseball card statistical type sense, I think it shows in their winning percentage.
Yeah, It's fascinating to hear about them and all these stories about these athletes.
But it's going to be a great season for basketball, a great season. I can't wait to talk to you guys again about it because I think it's going to be very, irrespective of some of the legal things that we've seen with Adidas this week in college basketball, I think it's going to be an incredibly exciting basketball season. We're in the dead middle of the college football season, and we've hit the midpoint of the NFL season. This is an exciting time for sports. Game 3 of the World Series tonight. It might be a long shot. No team has ever come back from 3 down, right? They're 2-0.
We'll be watching for sure.
If ever there was an opportunity to lead by faith, this is it.
There you go. Well, I'm sure we'll have you back. Doug Eldridge, partner of DLE Agency. Thanks so much for your analysis.
Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up our newscast for tonight and for this week. We thank you for watching. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We're back on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.